Alright, well, Durka is going to restart because he's actually got some lag issues in the game, but I will just start talking about this game as if he wasn't here, and once he's back, he will actually say something, and then we can actually get into a proper cast. Anyway, we do see that Bravado once again favoring that Alchemist that we saw last night against Bash. They do this time have the Shadow Demon Alchemist combo, which is one of the strongest combos with the Alchemist, obviously. Very easy to set up a long Alchemist stun with the Shadow Demon Disruption. Will be pretty effective at killing a Wisp pretty easily. It obviously depends, because Wisp can tether out of the Disrupt pretty effectively, but at the same time, like if you disrupt him when he tethers someone to escape, then it's going to be very good at preventing him from getting away. Have to see how Energy looks to combo against this. It's possible that they will go for maybe like the CK. I mean, the Wisp CK wouldn't... I mean, I know Bravado loves to run dual lane mid, and Shadow Demon Alchemist is probably stronger than Wisp CK, but like as the game progresses, Wisp CK will be very good at finding and picking off the Alchemist. Obviously, Alchemist not having a lot of armor and CK doing a ton of physical damage. Durka, you back? I think I can hear you.
Radiant team back.
Okay. Yes, I can hear you, and you can hear me. I assume since you said I'm back. You're actually a little bit quiet, but I think it should probably be okay. Yeah, that's significantly better. Thank you.
Dire team back. Radiant team.
I'm sorry.
The hero portrait, that basically bugs out on thousands of people's PCs because it's badly optimized. So,
Makes sense.
but what do we have here? Alchemist Shadow Demon?
Okay, well, as soon as you can hear me, I assume you'll say something. Anyway, we do see Energy with the first pick Wisp. We haven't seen Wisp getting into the game in a while in South African Dota, so it'll be pretty interesting to see how how Energy can utilize this hero. We'll actually have to start paying attention to the game and saying on some things in a couple seconds here. Durka? Still no?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you actually, that's good. You can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I've got about 5 FPS in Dota 2, so I'm going to have to...
Because it wasn't very loud. Try speaking again. Well, I guess we need a chance. I guess... Oh. Alright, well, Durka is going to restart because he's actually got some lag issues in the game, but I will just start talking about this game as if he wasn't here, and once he's back, he will actually say something, and then we can actually get into a proper cast. Anyway, we do see that Bravado once again favoring that Alchemist that we saw last night against Bash. They do this time have the Shadow Demon Alchemist combo, which is one of the strongest combos with the Alchemist, obviously. Very easy to set up a long Alchemist stun with the Shadow Demon Disruption. Will be pretty effective at killing a Wisp pretty easily. It obviously depends, because Wisp can tether out of the Disrupt pretty effectively, but at the same time, like if you disrupt him when he tethers someone to escape, then it's going to be very good at preventing him from getting away. Have to see how Energy looks to combo against this. It's possible that they will go for maybe like the CK. I mean, the Wisp CK wouldn't... I mean, I know Bravado loves to run dual lane mid, and Shadow Demon Alchemist is probably stronger than Wisp CK, but like as the game progresses, Wisp CK will be very good at finding and picking off the Alchemist. Obviously, Alchemist not having a lot of armor and CK doing a ton of physical damage. Durka, you back? I think I can hear you.
Yep, I'm back.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, and you can hear me.
Good.
I assume since you said I'm back. You're actually a little bit quiet, but I think it should probably be okay.
I can turn my volume up. Is that any better?
Yeah, that's significantly better. Thank you.
Yeah, I sometimes get drops of 100 FPS when I'm in drafting screen and main menu. It's an old problem with Dota 2. It's the the background animation of the embers for the hero portrait. That basically bugs out on thousands of people's PCs because it's badly optimized. So
makes sense.
But what do we have here?
Well,
Alchemist Shadow Demon?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know Scant, I guess, better than I do, so you probably know by now that he loves the Alchemist. No real surprise to see him pick it up this early.
Yeah, it's one of those heroes where you can either sit back and farm for 20 minutes, get some big items up, or get that Shadow Blade and look around the map to find some pickoffs. The only trouble is going to come from the mobility of the Wisp and the Nature's Prophet, who are very good at teleporting around the map and are finding pickoffs of their own.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, the other thing that Scant has shown that he likes about picking the Alchemist this early is that just the flexibility of potentially running the Alchemist as a support, which can really throw off the opposing team. Like if you draft based around the Alchemist being a carry or being a core hero on the opposing team, and then he switches it up in a support, even if it's not necessarily an optimal role for the Alchemist, still can be pretty effective to kind of, well, scantify a draft a little bit and make it a little bit unexpected. But yeah, I mean, the Wisp of Nature's Prophet will be really good at ganking him for sure.
The old scant curveball there. Yeah, we have seen Alchemist played as support in a couple of competitive games, sort of higher tier games as well, where we see the Arcane's mech. Because with that stunned and stable concoction and the acid spray, he does offer quite a lot in team fights. If you get up a medallion as well, the amount of minus armor you can bring out is significant.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, normally a medallion is a pretty high-risk item for an alchemist, but as a support, it's not really like you're going to focus him down that effectively anyway, because after he provides that initial burst, it's not that he really brings a lot to the fight until he has another stun up, which is a relatively long cooldown as far as support stuns go. So it's kind of reasonable to actually get the medallion on him. But we'll have to see. Meanwhile, though, we haven't really talked about Energy's draft at all. I mean, I was kind of saying right before you got back in that it's been a while since we've actually seen a Wisp in South African Dota. I mean, we don't see Wisps very often these days make it through the first set of bans. Well, I guess, to be perfectly honest, I don't watch a lot of Western Dota, which is your specialty a little bit more. And in Eastern Dota, Wisp just doesn't get picked very much. So I haven't seen Wisp in a game in a while.
Yeah, Wisp, Batrider, Treant are pretty much 3 permanent bans in the first phase for Western Dota. So seeing him come through, that's a bit of a surprise. But Storm Spirit, going to be that solo mid-roll most likely. And that's after a phase of banning by Bravado Gaming, taking out a lot of annoying laning heroes.
Yeah, the Ezreal is actually a little bit weird of a ban. I mean, I guess it's just because Ezreal is a very good safe lane tri-lane support, but I mean, having Ezreal and Wisp in a tri-lane, it's like the most passive tri-lane of all time. You really would have to be extremely careful, and the thing is, you couldn't even really pull in the safe lane with heroes like that. I mean, you could because you can blast the creep wave forward, but at the same time, like, you couldn't contest if the Radiant went for an aggressive, Radiant went for an aggressive tri-lane and actually try to contest your own pulls. But, I mean, the CK obviously makes a lot more sense, comboing very well with the Wisp and being very effective against the Alchemist if they do try to run the Alchemist as a core hero, because they have lots of physical damage very early on. And Storm, I mean, Storm makes a lot of sense. Storm is very good at picking off Nature's Prophet, but the Puck is a very good counter-pick to Storm. Long duration silence is basically the last thing the Storm wants, and honestly, Puck matches up quite well against Storm in the mid.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing with Keeper of the Light is that you can run dual lanes with the Wisp on that safe lane, or even mid possibly. So the Keeper of the Light could sit in the forest or sit in on the rune spots, just waiting to let off that Illuminate and harass down any enemy heroes that they're trying to focus down. But I wonder what Bravado Gaming are going to do here, because the Shadow Demon Alchemist, it looks like it's going to be a safe lane, tri-lane. So possibly they'll pick up a jungler of their own. Do you know if Enigma is played very often in South African Dota? Because that has fallen completely off the radar.
Yeah, no, it's really completely off the radar. I haven't actually seen an Enigma in South African Dota probably in about 6 months or something like that. So, yeah, I don't think there's very much of a chance of that. I can understand what you're saying, though, just because, I mean, with the Wisp already picked up and the Furion, there's not really a lot of a possibility for Energy to run an aggressive tri-lane to punish a kind of greedy jungle pickup from Bravado, so it would certainly make a lot of sense. But, oh, wow. And so we are going to actually see the really old-school E-Home Wisp Tiny. I mean, was that... I mean, it's certainly not a safer pick than maybe just taking, like, the Sven, or even, like, Phantom Assassin, but, I mean, what do you think of the Tiny here?
I'd prefer it to the Sven, simply because the Toss Avalanche combo is going to be good against Storm and Alchemist, try and take them down before chemical range, before the Storm uses Salty to try and escape. But if he gets caught on the wrong side of cogs, all of his mana's going to be burned, and he's going to be almost useless.
Right, and because Tiny's not typically a carry hero who picks up an early BKB, he's going to obviously have a lot more difficulty with dealing with clockwork cogs than other heroes like the Sven or like the PA, well, not necessarily CK, but I mean, heroes like this would. And at the same time, Bravado have drafted a very, I mean, not an extremely gank-heavy lineup, but I mean, it's pretty certain that Alchemist will be going for a Shadow Blade, and in that case, it will really transition into a very gank-heavy mid-game with the Storm, Clockwork, and Alchemist combo, making Tiny a very risky pick off. I mean, the thing is, like, you can't really Wisp counter gank when they're ganking the Tiny himself, because the Wisp is always going to be with the Tiny, and I mean, that just makes both of them a little bit more vulnerable. You do still have the Furion, and obviously if you have TP response from the Puck, it can be pretty effective, but it definitely opens them up to being a lot more vulnerable than they would with, like I said, something like Sven, which has more defensive capacity than a Tiny.
Yeah, I mean, they do have this large amount of nuke power, so if they do find a hero on its own, they're going to be able to take him down instantly. The trouble is going to be coming in, well, after the 20-minute mark when Clockwork starts engaging in team fights, gets more involved, and the cogs are going to be a pain in the backside for energy. They've got Furion, Wisp, Puck, Tiny, who are all very positional based, so they want to try and get their positioning spot on, perfect, try and bring down these heroes from Bravado, and Clockwork can be throwing cogs out left, right and centre to try and will annoy them.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an annoying hero, and because Energy have a lot of heroes who have like quasi-mobility. I mean, Puck, he can get past cogs pretty easily, but Wisp actually has quite a bit of difficulty with cogs, so I mean, it's definitely something that can really throw a wrench in what Energy wants to do. And obviously, like, cogs makes it very difficult to prolong team fights, which is exactly what a Wisp always wants to happen. I mean, the longer a team fight goes on, the more it's going to favor a team with Wisp. And, I mean, with the Clockwork, it can be very difficult to actually extend and kind of get better spacing. I actually did just get a message, though, from someone saying that you sound like you're in a server room, so I'm not sure if there's something you can do to maybe limit the background noise a little bit.
Yeah, I usually use push to talk, but it's not working at the moment. I'll try and figure something out.
Okay, well, yeah, maybe when we're in game we can figure it out. For now, it should just be fine. But last pick, Sand King. So yeah, it still looks like it's going to be a safe lane tri lane, but I mean, very scant support with a Sand King and a Shadow Demon being very effective roaming. Admittedly, Puck is one of the hardest mids to gank roaming, so we'll have to see where exactly that movement's going to go. You good?
Is that? Yeah, I have to turn my volume down slightly, and
so
hopefully this will sort things out.
Yeah, sounds a lot better now, actually. Okay, well, I guess I'll... Alright, you good?
Yep.
Okay. So just waiting on Energy's last pick here, which almost certainly will be some sort of a support. I mean, it's possible that they would like do something really strange and, you know, get greedy and put the Nature's Prophet in the jungle, tiny mid, but I think that would be a pretty bad decision, so it's pretty likely that this will be some sort of a support. Not really exactly sure what is left at this point. A lot of the top tier supports have all been banned down. I mean, there have been a lot of support bans, and then with the Shadow Demon Wisp and the Sand King already taken. I mean, there is Earthshaker, although I'm not sure that's really the sort of thing that they want. Nope, they actually go over the Visage. I don't know how I missed that. I mean, it's kind of surprising to see Visage go this late, although I guess it doesn't have a lot of synergy with the Wisp lane, but will definitely be effective as the game progresses with a Tiny and Puck, who can start fights with a lot of burst damage.
Is their burst damage even more? The output from that Soul Assumption is going to be amazing after the Tiny combo. And drawing on the map, it looks like they want to safeguard their own jungle, but we're just going to have to see what Bravado pull out of their hats here.
Yeah, I mean, I would say of these two teams, like, watching Niran draft, I mean, I guess last night, yeah, there was one of the other top 3 teams from South African Dota, which was Bash, drafting against Scant, is a little bit, I don't know. I mean, I feel like Niran's a more adaptive drafter than here we've got Flares, who's kind of more just like a safe drafter, so, I mean, it's pretty certain that it'll be Bravado on the offensive, trying to make something happen, at least for the first 5 or 6 minutes until Wisp does get that level 6, and they can actually look to finally get some tiny ganks. But I guess we can go over the players real quick. I guess you know Scant, so you can go over the Bravado lineup if you'd like.
Okay. We have Bravado Logan up on his top lane, the Clockwork going to be offlaning solo. We have Scant on that Shadow Demon, he's going to be looking to ward up and protect the mid lane. Mid we have that Storm, obviously, Bravado Headman, and down here we have an Alchemist and a Sand King, played by Notice That Bog and Virgil.
Meanwhile, over on Energy side, we have Donnie, who will be playing the offlane Nature's Prophet. Hasn't actually bought up any items yet, so we're not really certain whether he will immediately go offlane and try to pull creeps, or if he's just going to start in the jungle. Seam will be playing the mid Puck. Didn't actually get pooled anything this time. Flares will be supporting on that Wisp, with Zera supporting on the Visage, and safe lane farming will be Klitzy Bananas, who does have that Stout Shield going for a relatively safe build, probably not rushing a Midas. Ooh, and Zera not going to be in any trouble here. Does have quite, I mean, not high movement speed, but not Crystal Maiden terrible movement speed, and the Clockwork's not quite going to be able to catch him with the Shadow Demon a little bit further behind. So it looks like we will just head off to the laning phase with nothing too interesting happening. They are actually sending the illusions in here. Really nice move there by Scant to block 2 of these camps, which is going to be very annoying for the Nature's Prophet. Wisp is actually already heading in there. Might be able to kill off one of these illusions. No, he's actually not even going to notice it. Oh no, it's actually Zera who's going to try to take down this illusion, but there's no way that he's actually going to get it in time. The camp is still going to be blocked. So yeah, really heads up play there by Scant. Blocking. Oh wow, no, actually Zera did manage to get out of the easy camp in time. So that one spawned.
Just
so Furion at least is going to have something to kill, yeah.
Yeah, one of the main problems here this top lane is going to be coming from the experience disparity. The Wisp really needs that early level 6, so he's going to have to be sitting there pulling and stacking, trying to get those levels up, and Visage is going to be on zoning duty. But with the Clockwork, it's not that easy, especially when he has a Stout Shield as first item.
Yep, and we actually have seen another little bit of a problem here, which is actually that Klitzy Bananas, I guess, hasn't played the Tiny in a while. He actually just missed 4 straight CS, or at least 3 CS. He says he's actually has some lag issues, yeah, so acknowledging the CS problem himself. And obviously, Tiny is one of the more farm-intensive carry. I mean, like, certainly one of the more farm-intensive strength carries in the game, really needs a lot of items. Oh, dear, did we not, are spectators not allowed? So I just got a message from someone. Well, someone else can actually message me in 2 minutes when they hear this about spectators not being allowed. I wasn't actually the one who hosted the lobby, so I really hope that that actually was enabled. Although, given that Fluke messaged me about your sound, I assume that it's going to be okay, and it's probably just an individual bug for the one person who's having a problem. But, yeah, so... Lane equilibrium already a little bit screwed up here, and Clockwork is already level 2, which is definitely, well, I mean, it's not better than the Furion. Furion's also level 2, but you really don't want Clockwork to get that much experience that easily.
Yeah, when you have a tri lane, you want to be zoning out the offlaner and gaining experience by stacking and pulling constantly. I mean, when you look down at the Radiant side, you can see Scant level 1, Sanking level 1, but they are managing to keep this creep equilibrium back near the tower, so Alchemist has permanent free farm.
Yep, and Alchemist has gone for the greedy build, maxing Greevil's Greed, which makes perfect sense when you're in the safe lane without anyone here to actually kill, especially given the Nature's Prophet isn't even trying to pull or anything like that, so they're not even going to consider smoke ganking him underneath the tower. He's just going to sit here and farm while the Furion farms the jungle, and in that instance, Greevil's Greed is a perfect choice. Looks like he probably will be going for that fast Hand of Midas, which is perfectly reasonable in a situation like this, and meanwhile, the first smoke gank of the game will be coming out from Scant. Like I said, they will be trying to gank a rather difficult hero with Puck in the mid, but maybe they will actually try to look for a Nature's Prophet in the jungle instead, although I'm not even sure if they could kill a Nature's Prophet.
Well, once Storm hits level 4, I'm assuming he's going to be maxing Electric Vortex to increase the amount of disable he can bring out on the Puck, but we'll see from the Shadow Demon and SK, they're going to sit up on the high ground. Yeah, looks like they will be looking for that Nature's Prophet in the forest.
Yeah, Nature's Prophet does have TP up, but it basically just depends how well they can coordinate this. They don't want to use the stun right away, because if they use the stun right away, then he's just going to TP out. Oh, well, the Clockwork Rocket actually might make this enough damage for him actually to go down here. Level 1 Soulcatcher doing enough, and yeah, he is going to go down. That will be the first blood. Meanwhile, Seam has rotated in. We'll be looking to get a return kill on the Shadow Demon. Shadow Demon is probably going to be fine here, like you said, as the Storm has rotated over with 2 points in Electric Vortex, which Seam has to be pretty careful for. Meanwhile, though, Clockwork actually taking a fair amount of damage here top. Only 1 point in Soul Assumption, level 2 Visage at this point. Does get tossed up. Soul Assumption, 3 charges, and that will take out the Clockwork. So they do get the return kill, not necessarily the one they were looking for, but the one they deserved.
So much damage from Soul Assumption. That wasn't even a full Tiny combo, just after the toss and a couple of right clicks, managing to take the kill and finish off the Clockwork.
Okay, so yeah, I actually just got a message from Fluke saying that he's actually in-game, which would be how he... I don't know if when he says we're in-game, I assume that means that he's not actually spectating, which actually would be a pretty serious problem if, I guess Scant probably who hosted this didn't actually enable spectators, but we will continue on pretending like it matters, and hopefully it actually does. Clockwork is being pretty aggressive up here in the top, does have level 3, so 2 points in rockets now, and knowing that there's absolutely no mana on Klitzy Bananas looks like also going for Midas. I hope not. I mean, I hope this is actually going to be something else, although I can't imagine what it would be that he wouldn't have already spent some money. I mean, maybe he's just trying to rush drums before getting his boots. They are going to try to go on the Clockwork here, but again, they've just got no mana left on the Tiny, so most likely, oh, well, no. Actually, with Zera coming in, he has Soul Assumption, the charges are up, and wow, yeah, he's actually manages to take him down. I didn't think that would be possible, and I think that's the same thing the Clockwork was thinking, but does get punished. I mean, Visage just does so much damage.
Yeah, the one thing to notice though is that they have reduced this Nature's Prophet's farm. He's going to have quite a late Midas for being in the jungle and trying to rush that, whereas the Alchemist had his a couple of minutes, well, half a minute ago. He's already used his first charge.
Yeah, and I mean, Alchemist has decided to kind of switch his build up a little bit, didn't continue maxing Greevil's Greed, has gone back for a couple points in Acid Spray, I guess because they want to start pushing at some point here, but regardless, he's going to be so far ahead of the Nature's Prophet, who, like you said, did try to rush the Midas as much as possible, starting with that Gloves of Haste, that it really just isn't necessarily working out for energy at this point. The rotation was very good from Scant, as usual, and so yeah, with Klitzy Bananas not, actually, I guess the bottle, no, Well, maybe on the courier? Well, yeah, there was a bottle, I guess, picked up by the Wisp, so that explains how Klutzy Bananas got his mana back, which makes sense, I guess, him not picking up the bottle, but the Wisp doing it instead. Obviously, bottle, a great item on the Wisp. Yeah, Klutzy Bananas, 1,700 gold here, probably, at this point, almost certainly going for a Midas. And in my opinion, at least, and I'll ask for yours after this, it's really a mistake. I think playing against an Alchemist, you really want to be, you want to be active as soon as possible as a carry, rather than, just trade farm against an Alchemist, which I think is probably a mistake as a Tiny.
Yeah, Alchemist is going to peak so much faster than any other carry out there, especially melee, strength 1 like Tiny. And I've been told that spectators are allowed. There's a couple of people who can spectate, so I don't know if it's an original server problem.
Okay, so it's probably just the one person then. Oh, that's at least good. Anyway, Seam is heading towards the bottom rune. It will be Illusion, but Seam is actually going to be forced back. Has already used his orb, so there's a chance they could catch him here, but unfortunately Storm is just one creep away from level 6, which is going to mean that they're not going to be able to get this kill on Seam. And yeah, they're just going to go back to farming. If we take a look at the gold graph, we can see that the Radiant is just a little bit favored here, 750 gold ahead, but at the same time about 150 experience advantage for the Dire. So a small lead early on for the Radiant, despite a 2-1 score in favor of the Dire here, mostly just thanks to the fact that the rotation from the supports for the Radiant was a little bit more effective, and like you said, the Fury just got shut down so much in the jungle. Now well, not forced, but now opting to go down to the bottom lane. Oh, and I completely missed Puck getting taken down in the mid.
Yeah, I didn't see that either, but Storm expending all of his mana, must have ulted over, waited for the Puck to cast Orb and Phase Shift. Possibly SD and Sand King involved in the initial engagement, and then Storm followed up. But yeah, there's Alchemist, he's getting a bit out of control now. 44 for 9 with the Midas. Seam Doto.
Yeah, Seam had actually a pretty bad game, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, where he played Weaver, really not necessarily up to his usual standards. And he's, I guess, I know you know Scant, but I guess I don't know how well you know a lot of these other South African players, but Seam is actually one of the best South African players in general, but maybe just hasn't been playing up to his game right now. Anyway, Donnie Beast is going to be in a lot of trouble here. We do see the TP in coming from Puck, but it's probably not going to be in time. Donnie is going to go down. Puck does throw in his ultimate anyway. We'll have a Silence plus an Orb here. Visage is actually TP'd in as well. Soul Assumption does manage to bring down the Sand King. Furion going to TP as well. Puck is out of here. Meanwhile, Soul Assumption charges being built up on Zera, but Zera doesn't actually have enough mana to cast another Soul Assumption. Meanwhile, the Alchemist is just going to run away. Really a shame here, actually, that Zera decided to use that Soul Assumption. Oh, wow, and Tiny picks up a kill on Clockwork up top. It's a shame that Zera decided to use that Soul Assumption to finish off the Sand King, who is probably dead anyway, rather than using on the Alchemist, which is a much, much higher priority target. That exchange really would have been worth it for Energy, who are probably the king of counter TPs in South African Dota, if they had just managed to pick up that carry, who will be going for a Shadow Blade before he actually gets the Shadow Blade, rather than just killing a support and the other support TPing out.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you can see Alchemist escaping from that little engagement behind the tier 1 tower, and look what he finds. His supports have been stacking the jungle for him.
Yeah, it's nice to have supports doing that for you, and this does explain also why he did go back for the 4 points in Acid Spray, so that he can actually clear these camps, stack camps a little bit more effectively. Will actually need a little bit more mana in order to finish this one off, but he's just going to try to get the couple creeps that he can before going back to the lane, regenning up kind of semi-effectively with his ultimate. Actually, I think this was kind of a little bit of wasted time there. Probably could have been farming in lane and just regenning up in a situation like that. Unless he has the Acid Spray, he probably shouldn't be trying to finish off the stack camps like that. Oh, and wait, no, meanwhile, Storm going in mid on Puck. The stun does come out from the Sand King. Puck is actually going to go down with the Furion ultimate coming in to do a little bit of damage to the Radiant side, but not really being significant anyway. The good news, though, is that Zera will actually be here to pick up experience while Puck is dead, which will mean a faster level 6 for the Visage, so it's not a total loss for Energy.
Yeah, and Wisp isn't far from level 6 either. He's going to be sitting on this lane, just trying to babysit the Tiny, pick up maybe another kill on the Clockwork, who's sitting on level 4, almost 5. He needs his 6, he needs some kind of boots. Oh, middle lane. Oh, I just caught the end of that.
Yeah, I missed that, but I guess with a haste on the Storm, it was a pretty easy pickup on the Visage, which is really important because, like I said, if he'd been able to sit in that lane for just a little bit longer, he would have gotten his level 6, which is a very, very important level 6. One of the most important in the game, actually. And, yeah, slowing him down, the Wisp, like you said, will have level 6, probably in 2 creep waves, maybe even 1, depending on how... Right now, he's actually standing outside of experience range because they actually want to try to set up another kill on the Clockwork. It's been pretty good for him. We kind of said that the Clockwork should actually be pretty effective against these heroes, but Clockwork actually has died 3 times, which is basically what's keeping the Wisp this high in experience in this game, which, this is kind of a shame, actually. If the Clockwork hadn't died so much, the Wisp would be a lot slower since they haven't really gotten a lot of pulls, and they've had to TP a fair amount, the other support. So, I don't know, it would be so much better for them if this Clockwork had just played a little bit more cautious, because that Wisp timing is just so much more important for Energy that, well, it's not more important, so much more important, but significantly more important than the Clockwork level 6 is.
Yeah, he's had to sit a bit too far up his lane, simply because that Visage was at the top, pulling and stacking and bringing the equilibrium back towards the tier 1 tower. So the Clock had to play a little bit too aggressive, then he got zoned out, Wisp and Tiny combo, that just takes him completely out of the game. And now we're not really going to see the strength of Clock until about the 20-minute mark when he gets boots, arcanes, maybe a bottle or something.
Yeah, he does have enough for his boots now, and he will actually head over to the side shop and buy those. He should probably sell that magic, or sell his Iron Branch and pick up a TP, since he will have level 6 soon enough. As soon as he has level 6, he does really want to have that TP. Meanwhile, we see a little bit of counter warding in the mid here. Seam is actually going to decide to throw out an ultimate on here. He's going to throw... Oh, and yeah, Wisp Tiny coming in as well. Unfortunately, this is going to be quite a bit of an overkill. They are going to get the Sand King, but not probably going to be completely worth it. Furion TPing as well, actually putting 5 heroes towards the mid. Meanwhile, wow, Storm coming right back in is actually going to be able to pick off the Furion. Soul Assumption going to miss. Storm juking that as well. So 1-for-1 trade with the entire rotation from the energy side here. Not worth it at all for energy. The only good news is that Visage picked up level 6, but Bravado are going to be more than happy with that, with this Alchemist still free farming bottom. I think he probably has his Shadow Blade done. Yeah, no, just the Shadow Amulet actually. So he's still a little ways away from the Shadow Blade, but after he gets this tower bottom, he will basically have it. Ooh, well, TP's in. Oh, is the catapult going to get it? Let's... Yeah, oh, no, Seam, intelligently enough, is actually going to deny it. Just barely.
But yeah, the whole time that they sent 5 people mid, Wisp TPs the Tiny and Furion TPs as well. That Clockwork is getting all the experience he wants. Alchemist down at the bottom lane unfortunately doesn't get that tier 1 tower, but he was farming all the time as well. Netta's Prophet has in fact opted to go for Treads instead of that Midas, deciding that it wasn't worth his time to continue.
The Tiny is going top on the Clockwork. Clockwork got a preemptive cogs up just in time that they weren't actually able to do anything with the combo there. But yeah, that's I wouldn't have expected that from the Furion, but I guess he was just so slowed down that it made sense to him to just kind of get a little bit more strength. I mean, he's very vulnerable at this point in the game with the Storm, with the Clockwork, and obviously soon to be with the Shadowblade Alchemist, but I'm not really sure if the Treads are actually going to be enough to keep him alive. If it was me, I probably still would have just been greedy and gotten the Midas. Midas obviously so good on Furion, but more pressing than Furion's concerns are actually Tiny's. We've got an Invis Storm up here, Clockwork, who will probably TP back to this tower in a second, now that he has his ultimate. Now, actually didn't buy a TP, decides to get Bracers instead. I'm a little bit surprised at that, and we do have a disconnect from Sand King, which will give us a chance to kind of deal with what's going on in this game.
Yeah, I mean, Midas on Furion is one of those items with Enchantress and other jungle heroes. If you're behind, it lets you get back into the game, and if you're ahead, it increases your advantage. So I'm not so sure going for the Treads first is the best idea. I don't see where his item progression is going to go from here, because with the Treads, he really has to engage on a lot more things on the map, maybe a mech for the team.
Yeah, I think it'll certainly be a mech at this point. I mean, Wisp, because he went for that fast bottle, isn't going to be anywhere near getting the mech. Randomly charging into you guys. Yeah, so without the Wisp being able to get any reasonable timing of a mech, and with the Furion going a safer build with the Treads, I think it'll almost certainly be a mech for him. Visage also just went for the Ring of Basilius, so yeah, you're kind of like 2 usual support mech carriers are kind of out of it. But yeah, the problem is that it's just so difficult for them to actually engage on Bravado with the Furion TPing in. I mean, we saw it, if Furion TP'd in there, he had the Treads already, and he still just got blown up by the Storm. And I mean, there's just a ton of burst damage that comes up from Bravado and some amazing counter initiation. I mean, unless you can go on the Shadow Demon, you're always going to have a very difficult time initiating on anyone else, because the Clockwork can hook away or can almost hook in to protect his teammates. Sand King is very escapable as well as Storm, and the Alchemist will have a Shadow Blade. Now, I would suspect that these supports are going to need to get dust very soon. I mean, they've got well, I guess the good thing that the Alchemist did is he didn't actually put the Shadow Amulet on him, but when you see an Alchemist get Treads, you can almost always expect that he will be going for a Shadow Blade, so I would hope to see the Wisp picking up dust really soon here, since he has the gold and he can be anywhere on the map with it.
Yeah, I guess more recently we've seen Battle Furies coming out on Alchemist just to increase that farm rate, so they get a 14-minute Battle Fury after Treads, but that's usually skipping the Midas completely. So yeah, when you see Midas Treads, you do often consider that he's going to get a Shadow Blade very shortly afterwards. The big thing here is that Storm, he's getting pretty fat. Level 10, already halfway through to his Orchid, 1 Oblivion Staff up, he has his Treads, Bottle, Wand, he's pretty set for this mid-game.
Yeah, we actually see something a little bit unusual from him too, which is that he did decide to take the 4th point in Electric Vortex at some point rather than just going back into Remnant. Remnant, not the most amazing ability ever, and it doesn't scale extremely well, but usually 4 points in Vortex isn't really necessary, because with 3 points obviously you have enough to pull into the Remnant, but I guess it makes sense when you're playing against a hero like a Puck, who, I mean, that extra half second really could be the difference between being able to get the kill on the Puck and not.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh look, drawing on the map.
No one's ever done that in a game of Dodo before. Anyway, we actually do see the Sand King connecting back in. He does still have Burrow Strike, so he'll probably be just perfect down here. One thing that I would actually like to see from the Alchemist at this point, because, I mean, he's going for such a farm-heavy build, I really am surprised that he actually hasn't picked up a Quelling Blade yet. I mean, it makes sense that he wants to get the Shadow Blade as soon as possible, because it's going to increase his survivability, but the Quelling Blade would really help him farm these jungle creeps a lot, and he's playing against a Furion, so I think it's a pretty reasonable pickup for him.
Yeah, he did finish his last tango a couple of minutes ago.
Oh, wait.
Which have been
With Tiny coming into the bottom here, they are going to go on the Sand King. Sand King is going to get tossed and avalanched up, and they are going to manage to pick him off. Hopefully this is going to transition into a push in the bottom tower. Sorry, continue what you're saying?
He did use his last tango, so yeah, Quelling Blade would be a good pickup against that Sprout, but I'm surprised that Sand King died, like you were saying. And then Wisp has to relocate back and die to the Storm. But I'm surprised that Sand King died down there. He did still have his Burrow Strike, as you said. He wasn't in such a terrible situation.
I guess he just didn't expect that they would actually bring in the Wisp Tiny for it. He just thought that it was the 3 heroes, and because none of them really had that effective of a disable, I mean, I guess he was just kind of waiting on the puck. He figured he'd be fine, but yeah, kind of a little bit careless from him, but I mean, it works out in the end because they do end up killing the Wisp. 2 TPs are going to come to defend this tower top here. Tiny does get most of his mana burn, like he talked about, by really well-placed cogs from the Clockwork. Meanwhile, though, Steam does ultimate the Storm, but that's probably the most ineffective hero to ultimate in the game with the puck. Meanwhile, Sand King getting a nice double stun in. Storm coming back in, does get silenced by the puck now, who actually was still holding onto the silence. Orbs through, does manage to finish off the Storm in this case. Meanwhile, the Clockwork cogs himself in, burns the last of Zera's mana, so Zera's not going to be able to do anything, and the big surprise is going to be this Shadowblade Alchemist coming in to finish off the Tiny. Tiny does end up getting taken down by the Sand King Burrow Strike, and then the Alchemist finishes off the Wisp. Now Zera's turn to die as well, trying to finish off the Shadow Demon before dying himself. The Shadow Demon just barely lives and manages to get an ultimate off on Steam, which is going to allow Alchemist to continue chasing, but, oh, nice micro actually by the Visage, does finish off the Shadow Demon actually with his Familiars. So in the end, we do have a 3-for-3 trade, but the bad news is that Tiny dies and the Alchemist lives, and Alchemist farm is just going to continue, as they probably take this top tower.
Well, they did take the tier 1 and bot before defending top, but that engagement did swing the way of Bravado, swang back the way of Energy, but it seemed quite even at the end after the couple of heroes that fell. I don't think they'll be able to take the tier 1 top, because the respawn timers are quite low and Wisp teleporting in now.
Yeah, and they does actually have the dust up now, so there's no way the Alchemist is going to be getting away with the Shadow Blade. Kind of overlapping the abilities a little bit in the beginning there, but intelligently enough, well, no, actually not intelligently enough. He actually didn't retether.
Oh!
Yeah, wow, so he's actually going to get away. That's kind of a mistake there. The other thing that he didn't do, which I would have expected him to do, was in that situation, obviously, you know, you can break the tether and then tether again to actually stun the Alchemist one more time, and I'm a little bit surprised that he actually didn't do that, because if he had, then they almost certainly would have killed the Alchemist, but...
Also, Tiny tossed the Wisp into the Alchemist rather than tossing the Alchemist himself, so that was a missing chunk of damage there, which could possibly have finished him off.
Yep, pretty unfortunate actually, because they really needed that kill on the Alchemist. Alchemist still has yet to die, sitting at 2-0-2. We'll be going for that BKB now. Very smart pickup next to pretty much guarantee that he can't be taken down by this burst combo. And yeah, talking about that fight top, I really like it was obviously very even. I mean, it was 3-3 in the end, but would have been a lot better for Energy if Seam had just held on to that ultimate and not used it on a Storm. It's possible that he actually just hadn't played puck against Storm enough to understand the interaction that Storm is invulnerable when using his ultimate, because like obviously you never really want to dream coil someone who can just go invulnerable at will.
I think he may have underestimated the amount of mana that Storm had left. Yeah, so feeling that he could have held him in place, possibly jumped in silence before Storm had a chance to get away, but you know, mistakes happen.
Yeah, that's true. And so meanwhile, looks like we are going to have a little bit of pressure from both teams onto this mid. We've got both the Storm and the Puck back mid. We do have the pings coming out from Zera on that mid tier 1 tower there that they still haven't managed to take down yet. This will be really important for them. If they can get this tower along with the bottom tier 1 tower down, it will be really easy for them to transition into taking a Roshan, which is what they really need. At the same time, they will need the Visage to pick up the medallion. He's pretty far behind that because he has actually opted to finish off that magic wand to pick up sentries and dust in order to prevent this Alchemist from being effective. Meanwhile, though, we do have action top. Yeah, the Wisp, I guess he TP'd in the Tiny, but then all the TPs and the Tiny just ran for his life, abandoning the Wisp to his fate. The good news is, this means they probably have an opening to push into the mid now. No, but Furion actually goes bottom instead. Don't really understand that. I would have expected the Furion here to just go mid and them to pressure the mid tower. I think they probably could have got it with the Furion plus the Familiars.
Yeah, I think he wants to pick up a little bit more gold. His TP will cool down and they'll probably have a go at mid in a couple of seconds. Yeah, Tiny does join them, nuke down the creep wave, start pushing in there.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, Tiny still doesn't have his ultimate yet, so it's not going to be so easy for him taking this tower. We do see the TP coming in from Clockwork. Clockwork does get stunned plus tossed. Doesn't actually get silenced before managing to get the cogs off, but they do end up killing him anyway. At the meantime, Alchemist did take the tower top, and they still haven't actually gotten this tower mid. The chase is going to continue into the jungle. Meanwhile, the Storm plus the Shadow Demon are going to try to farm these familiars. The familiar, number one, taking a lot of damage. Storm is going to jump after this. Familiars do get resummoned. Nice play there, actually, by the Visage, not letting those go down. An important 200 gold that the Dire or Radiant team was looking for. So, in the end, they do pick up one hero kill, but they did lose the tower top, so probably not worth it. I think if the Furion had come mid sooner, they might have been able to get in a better position when Bravado came in to take that tower, but we'll have to see. I mean, Bravado looking to smoke up into the mid here, wanting to get a pick off and transition that into the tier 1 tower of their own. So much pressure at this point in the game is being focused on these tier 1 towers in the mid, which are so important for taking the next Roshan, or the first Roshan.
Yeah, one thing both teams have to be very careful of is not getting too cocky, not overextending. They both seem very desperate to try and get a pick off, try and make that advantage count, take a tower down after taking a couple of kills. But what's going to be key for them is actually getting farm up on this Tiny and Alchemist. That Tiny isn't far away from his Aghanims right now.
Yeah, and that Aghanims is going to be really important for him. The Aghanims for him is kind of akin to the Battle Fury for the Anti-Mage, because once he has the Aghanims, he can really start to farm very quickly. Now, he still doesn't have drums or Yasha, so his attack speed is going to be lacking, but he can still clear creep camps quite quickly and push out the lanes reasonably effectively. I mean, he has to still be pretty careful in the lanes just because of the gank ability of the Radiance lineup, but still, obviously, a very important pickup for him. The bigger issue, though, is that the Alchemist actually, yeah, is done with the BKB. We do see the Wisp Tiny TP in coming in bottom. They actually do manage to get the dust on the Alchemist. They are going to actually spot him out here. Will the stun come out? They do manage to toss him first, then the stun. They actually are probably going to finish him off. One more right click, and unfortunately for him, his ultimate ends just at the wrong time, which makes it a lot easier for them to finish him off. Gonna leave Klitzy Bananas down here to continue farming, I guess, although now Klitzy Bananas is just running back, so maybe just a little bit of miscommunication there with Wisp. No, looks like he's going to farm.
Yeah, he did manage to finish his BKB, the Alchemist that is. But dying like that, he was too far out on his lane. 4 of his teammates sitting at mid trying to protect the tier 1 and apply pressure there. And Alchemist really desperately wanting that BKB so he can join in the next engagement, which they will probably be looking for right now. Nice wards up from the Dire. There's one up on the top of this hill so they can see everything that's going on.
Yep, definitely good vision from both teams kind of towards the other team, which really, like you said, I mean, shows that they're both very desperate to actually get a pick off and be able to transition that into something rather than kind of warding defensively. Neither team really wants to farm that much, it seems, even though one team does have an Alchemist. Taking a look at this Furion now, he is sitting on 2,600 gold. He has enough for that mech. Probably should have picked it up by now, but it looks like he's not going to be going for the mech after all. I guess he's going to leave that presumably to the Wisp or the Visage, both of them so far away from actually having enough gold for that, so I think this is probably a mistake. Getting that mech up sooner rather than later would be really important for these team fights where they're already going to have quite a bit of difficulty actually managing. I mean, and I don't really understand, like, why would you go for treads and then not go for a mech? Because, like, you basically took the safe route, but now he's just going to go straight for a hex, I guess. But if you're going for a hex, I mean, the Midas would pay for itself by the time you had it.
Yeah, exactly. I thought he would be going for a mech straight off, but it's 27, almost 2,800 gold now. It does look like he's going to try and build that hex. Yeah. Unusual decision making. Well, we'll see. He hasn't spent his gold yet, so anything's still possible. He might even go for a Shadow Blade.
Yeah, well, it's also possible that he could actually go for an Orchid. I mean, an Orchid would be a pretty decent pickup against the Storm here. Storm does already have his own Orchid picked up, which really is going to be a big problem for Energy in this next team fight, but the fact that he went for a fast Orchid, or a first item Orchid, not really necessarily a fast Orchid, but means that he's still going to be a long ways off from getting a BKB, so an Orchid of the Nature's Prophet would probably be good for about the next 8 or so minutes in the game, where he could make it rather difficult for the Storm in team fights, having a long-range silence in addition to the short-range silence. Now, and let's just go for the Shadow Blade. Don't really like that so much, because it's just going to be so easy for the Storm to carry dust and just pick him off.
Yeah, I thought it might happen. You could see him getting, oh, here's the Storm, straight away. But no reveal.
Yeah, well, it actually saved his life once.
Yeah, slightly too late on the Electric Vortex from Storm there. He may have been able to pick him up.
Yeah, but...
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't really like that either. I mean, you know, getting Shadow Blade on Furion, it's really a split pushing item and kind of indicates that you want to just like spread the map out, draw the game out, and go as long as possible. But again, I don't think that's the best strategy ever when you're playing with the Tiny against an Alchemist. I mean, I guess the one thing that can be said is eventually, at some point in the game, the Alchemist probably will get out carried by the Tiny. Oh, and they're going to go in here. TP does come in. Once again, they do have the dust, but this time there's a BKB up on the Alchemist. Alchemist can basically... he actually doesn't have a TP. I guess he must have TP down here, but he can just run away, and there's not really going to be any threat. But yeah, I mean, Alchemist is going to max out so much sooner than the Tiny, but I guess eventually the Tiny with a Wisp on his team might be able to outcarry the Alchemist. I'm still not sure about that, but I mean, I guess maybe that's what they're thinking, or maybe the Nature's Prophet just isn't on the same page as his teammates here and just kind of a little bit more focused on his own personal game.
Yeah, that might be the case there, because a mech would be helping them quite a lot. With the Tiny, he has his Aghanims. During that Dream Coil from Puck, he can do a lot of damage. Visage with that Soul Assumption as well, dishing out the nukes. It's a difficult decision to make though, because if Furion does split push, that's obviously going to try and spread out Bravado. They do have a Storm who can jump around the map, a Clockwork with a hook who can catch out that Furion, so it's not really the ideal option, but we'll see what he does with it.
I mean, I guess it's possible that their idea is that if he spreads out the map, then it's going to force Bravado to kind of like farm side lanes a little bit more. And actually, yeah, here they come in once again on the Furion. Unfortunately, they do have a dust. No dust. Oh, I don't. No, it was actually Furion that used... That's really weird, because the Storm is actually dusted. Oh no, the Furion had a dust as well. Okay, so, alright, that makes more sense now. I was really confused why there was a dust icon on the Storm. I don't understand why the Furion used a dust. I guess it just must have been a misclick when he's trying to TP.
I'm gonna dust you guys. I mean, it's not like he'd be scared of Alchemist coming in because he couldn't do anything even if he had, so it must have been a misclick.
Yeah, I was really confused because I was like, okay, so the Furion is dusted, but then I was like, no, the Furion might not be dusted because the Storm actually has the icon, but yeah, it must just have been a little bit weird of a misclick. I mean, he's probably just a little bit freaked out there. But so anyway, what I was saying is I guess it's possible that Energy's idea here is that they kind of want to like force the Alchemist into side lanes, or the Storm into side lanes, or even, I mean, to a lesser extent, the Clockwork or the Sand King into side lanes, and then with them kind of like forced into the side lanes because the Furion's been split pushing so much, they can TP the Wisp plus Tiny to gank them rather than just allowing Bravado to group up as 5. I mean, that's the only really way that I can think this strategy kind of fits in with the way their lineup works, which I guess is possible. Anyway, we do see that the Wisp is also going for his mech now, so that will be the mech carrier, but it's still going to be a really, really late mech.
Yeah, I think it's the same kind of ideology behind when you pick a Clinks and a Tidehunter. Oh, top lane.
Storm up top again is going to go in on the Furion. It does manage to catch him this time, and there's no way that the Furion is going to be getting away as the Sand King finishes him off. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, it's the same kind of tactic as when you pick a Clinks and a Tidehunter. You take the Clinks and you try and pick people off and force them to go as 5 and walk into your Tidehunter who has Ravage. So you're having the Furion who you want people to try and group up around, then you have the Tiny Puck come in and cast their spells, take people down with the big AoE nukes.
Yep. So we are going to see the push coming in on the tier 1 mid now, finally trying to get this tower down. Unfortunately, Furion is down, so this will be a 4 versus 5 fight. Orchid coming out on Seam. Seam is probably going to go down here. Isn't dead yet. Unfortunately, they still don't have this mech. They wouldn't anyway, though, because the Furion isn't there. Clockwork hookshotting in, but onto a disrupted target. Zera taking a lot of damage, does get pushed back by the Cogs, and ends up going down to the Alchemist. Meanwhile, Tiny is actually still doing a fair amount of damage here. Puck does buy back and come back in. Tiny still on a Ravage, manages to get a stun on the Alchemist. Unfortunately, Alchemist doesn't actually have enough mana to go back into his ultimate now, so is almost certainly going to go down. Now Furion has TP'd in and gotten a Sprout off. The Storm has actually bought back himself and is actually going to be able to pull Klitzy Bananas out of here. Is it going to be enough to finish Klitzy off? Klitzy uses wand charges, does get ulted by Seam once again, which actually, again, just doesn't do anything. Toss from the Tiny does manage to finish off the Shadow Demon, though, and the Familiars are hunting for Scant, or not for Scant, but actually for the Storm. Storm is going to jump out of here, but Seam is still on the hunt, uses the Silent. 2 more right clicks will actually be enough. Storm still trying to bottle up as much as possible, going to continue jumping. Unfortunately, doesn't have a TP because he TP'd back in, so they can actually continue this chase. The only problem for them is that there is actually still a tower here, and yeah, Donnie Beast hunting for him, but not going to catch him, and looks like, well, Storm is probably going to get out of here. But in the end, a very good fight for Energy.
That Tiny doing so much work. Did Alchemist spend his money, or did he buy back and die?
I don't know. I didn't think he bought back and died. I think he just only has 1,100 gold, I guess.
No, he had 3,800 on top of the BKB Midas Shadowblade.
No,
so
he didn't buy back, actually. I don't see an item anywhere. Oh, no. Sorry, there's items on the courier. His AC is almost finished.
Okay. Slightly worrying there.
Yeah. Yeah, the
so much damage caused by that. Continue.
Sorry, go. No, I was just gonna. Sorry. I feel like it's one of those situations where you're walking down the street and you go left and the other person goes left and then you go right and the other person goes right.
Sorry. I was just saying that Tiny did so much damage in that team fight. He just kept surviving. He was on about 200 health at the end. The Storm was still scared to jump back on him, and the Soul Assumption constantly spammed.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess the biggest thing for them in that fight was just the fact that the Storm initiated on the puck, which obviously was a very good initiation because he was able to kill off the puck before the puck could actually do any of his like big team fight abilities. But because they started the focus of the fight on the puck, it really allowed the Tiny to kind of go unnoticed. And I'm sure after that fight they won't make that mistake again. I mean, like you said, Tiny did just way too much damage in that fight. Definitely going to be a big impact at this point. It has 5,000 gold. I mean, at this point, I don't think you would go back for a drums because drums is more of an early to mid game item. I would expect next to probably see a Manta style, which I think is probably the best choice. Although it's still possible that he would maybe go for more of that Aoi 2000 like Assault Kuros build.
I think a BKB wouldn't be an awful choice here.
That's true. I mean, yeah. It's so painful to have to get a BKB on a Tiny because like then he's still just completely lacking the attack speed and like the extra damage that he would get from the Manta or the AC. But yeah, I mean, I guess a BKB would be pretty reasonable.
He really does need it because, like you said in the last fight, they focused down Puck, they took her down relatively quickly. But if they focused their stuns, Burrow Strike, Electric Vortex, Cogs, Hook, Alchemist, Unstable Concoction, all on Tiny, he's not going to be able to dish out a single unit of damage.
The only problem for him, if he does get the BKB, is that he can still get trapped into the cogs and then just not be able to do anything. And if he has a Manta, he can certainly get out of the cogs a lot more easily. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's definitely a safer build if he goes for the BKB.
Yeah, I guess he can still get hooked and still get purged by the Shadow Demon, so it's not going to allow him total free reign in the team fights. We'll see.
But, I mean, the interesting thing for Bravado at this point, actually, to notice is that the Sand King doesn't actually... I mean, he's still very, very far from getting a Blink Dagger. In fact, the Sand King had some nice burrow strikes in this game, but we haven't actually seen... I mean, there's probably been an Epicenter tried to be cast at least once, but there we go, the BKB. So definitely has the same mindset of you of going for the relatively safe build here, when it's probably right. I mean, he does need to be careful. But yeah, the Sand King hasn't ever basically used an effective Epicenter in this game, and without a Blink Dagger anytime soon, still going to be a long ways off from getting that, which is kind of a shame for him. Kind of just basically going unnoticed in this game. I mean, you know, like a Shadow Demon, he's still fine like this, but a Sand King does actually need to start picking up items at some point here in order to actually be as effective as he should be.
Definitely. In order to be useful, that Sand King desperately needs a Blink Dagger with a Tether Stun, a Silence from Puck, Avalanche, and Familiar Stuns, which have been pretty good from this Visage so far. The micro has been quite impressive. The Sand King is going to definitely need a Blink Dagger to try and get any kind of ulti off.
Yeah. One thing from the Visage that I think is a little bit unusual is the fact that he's actually opted for the 4th point in Gravekeeper's Cloak. Usually we only see 3 points in Gravekeeper's Cloak and then going back for Grave Chill, just because the 4th point doesn't scale near as well as the first 3 do. But I guess in this game he's just trying to be as safe as possible. Again, with all the burst damage that can come out from Bravado, it still does make a somewhat of a difference, the 4th point, so I guess it's worth it to him. But I don't know. I mean, I wonder. At the same time, the Alchemist still has a relatively fresh BKB, so Grave Chill isn't going to be that effective because there's not really any other heroes you really want to use it on that much. Oh, Wisp TV coming into the jungle here. Donnie Beast is going to get picked off, and now the Wisp and Tiny are actually in a pretty bad spot here. Tiny is going to pop the ultimate, or pop the BKB, but he does get ultimate by the Shadow Demon immediately. Shadow Demon does manage to disrupt. Wow, Tiny cleaves 2 heroes and then another 2. Tiny just killing absolutely everyone. Soul Assumption comes in. There actually is a Dust, and Tiny, that actually should have been a Rampage. Wasn't Ultra Kill in the end, but oh my god, when you clump up for a Tiny, he can get a lot of kills.
Yeah, there's a nice Shadow Demon Purge on him, but still, that BKB just allowed him total free reign, cleaving through so many heroes. Sand King made a minor mistake, and he walked out of Dream Coil, so that it snapped and it stunned him. He did have Burrow Strike off cooldown, so that may have saved a couple of heroes, possibly the Alchemist, during that fight. But a messy engagement nonetheless.
The Purge was very good by the Shadow Demon. The problem was the disruption actually just basically did nothing. He disrupted the Wisp, which didn't really make any sense. And then obviously, like, the fact that they were all already so close to to the Tiny when the fight started, because of the Wisp Tiny TP in, meant that he was still able, with that really long range with his ultimate, with his ultimate plus Aghanims, to cleave people pretty effectively before they were able to run out of his range and just kind of kite him thanks to the Purge. And we actually see him, he's picked up a Morbid Mass, so I guess what is on the courier? No, he's got a Yasha on the courier, and so he's going to go Mask of Madness plus Yasha here. I can't say that I like the Mask of Madness that much, especially with a Shadow Demon on the other team, but well, I don't know. I guess it'll work.
It's fine.
Oh no, it's actually it's actually Helm of the Dominator. It's not going to be a Mask of Madness.
Oh really?
Yeah, much safer.
That surprises me. I would definitely have gone for the Mask of Madness there.
I've got to say, I'll be honest, I'm happy that he didn't. I would really hate to see him throw this game after he's played so well, and the Mask of Madness definitely gives him a greater possibility to throw. Storm is coming in here. The Tiny is just going to TP out. The Clockwork is way too far away to actually get a clean hook shot off, and so Tiny is going to be just fine. Unfortunate for him, that does mean he actually wastes his 9-second BKB charge. Doesn't necessarily waste, it does save his life, but doesn't actually get a whole lot out of it. Meanwhile, the Furion is pushing top, mismicroing a little bit there. Actually could have been stunned by the Sand King, but the Sand King's much more concerned with actually getting all the farm from these creeps, which the Storm takes anyway, and yeah, I mean, I guess that gets the Storm closer to his BKB, which is important. Meanwhile, the Wisp Tiny TPing into the jungle here. Seam does manage to throw out an ultimate to prevent the Clockwork from TPing out, tossing the Furion in. That is a kill, another kill for Tiny, who is now on a wicked 6 streak, and they will be pushing this tier 2 tower mid, I think. Although at the same time, with Klitzy Banana's BKB down, that would be pretty risky, so I guess they will just back off now. Probably look towards oh no, they have Roshan, so I guess look just, I don't know, farm the enemy jungle.
Yeah, it's one thing I pointed out about this Dire lineup, the mobility they have. 1 second they're split across the map, the next second there's Wisp, Tiny, Puck, Furion, all on top of Clockwork, and he had no chance to escape.
Yeah, and it's definitely playing really well for them in the mid game. I'm really surprised because with the amount of farm they gave the Alchemist early, I thought the Alchemist would be a much bigger factor in this game, but they've really shown that the Tiny can actually be pretty good against it. That while the Alchemist can kill one hero very effectively, so far the Tiny's been good at killing like 2 to 3 heroes at a time, which the Alchemist just can't compete with. And if we take a look at the gold graph, it actually does have them 3,000 gold ahead as well as 12,000 experience ahead. The push is coming in on the mid tower, fortification is up, Familiars are going to come in, 1 stun, 2 stun on the Storm, basically just to keep Familiars alive. Soul Assumption is going to be blasted in the Storm as well, just to push him back. Stun coming on to the Alchemist. Alchemist going to get tossed up. BKB used by Klitzy Bananas and the Alchemist as well. Going to man fight each other. Klitzy Bananas does get purged, so this time he actually won't be able to finish off the Alchemist. Alchemist 1 second left on the stun, just ends up running it out anyway. Meanwhile, though, Io and Puck do manage to kill off the Sand King and the Storm. Sand King really needs that Blink Dagger. Shadow Demon going to go down as well to Io. Wisp actually getting a double kill. It doesn't happen very often. And now the push will certainly come onto the tier 2 tower in the mid, with the Aegis still up on the Tiny.
I don't see how Bravado are going to get back into this game. There was a 5k gold disparity between the Alchemist and the Tiny, but Tiny has brought that all the way back. He's been absolutely exceptional in these team fights, picking off heroes that cleave, destroying the SD and SK in these fights. Clockwork hasn't proved to be too much of a problem really. The cogs, they were placed quite nicely in the first couple of engagements in the game during the 20-minute mark, but more recently they have found their way around them.
Looks like Alchemist is going to try to pick off the Furion on top here. TP is going to come in. It's not actually going to matter. Alchemist with his ultimate does manage to finish off the Furion, and he's going to deny the tower. So, nice pickup there by him, but at the same time, Energy are going to pick off the tier 2 tower bottom, and yeah, like you said, I mean, it looks like the Tiny's actually just taking this game away. So, I mean, even though both of us kind of necessarily didn't agree with the Midas on Tiny, it's actually worked for him, because he's actually been able to catch up with his farm going. Sand King does Burrow Strike into the tether, but actually I think it's stunned maybe by the passive of the Tiny. Tough to say there. I'm not sure if the tether would have actually reached that far. Does immediately buy back, still has his ultimate, so he's going to look for another Burrow Strike into ultimate, but meanwhile they're just going to burn through the Aegis on Klitzy Bananas. Klitzy Bananas just cleaving down the tower, does burn the Aegis now. Meanwhile though, the Furion is still dead for 25 seconds, won't actually be able to TP in and help them, so this will be a 4 versus 5. Alchemist coming in, does get tossed because they have the gem, is actually going to die because he's not able to activate his ultimate. Alchemist actually commits suicide. Nice there by him. Meanwhile though, the Tiny is still just continuing to cleave these buildings with the tether up from the Wisp. Alchemist actually forced to buy back, and this is just going to signal a retreat for Energy. Will Storm be able to jump on someone here? I think he has to really want to at this point, because the Alchemist was forced to buy back, but looks like he's not actually going to, and Energy's just going to retreat out of here. Amazing fight for them. Burning the Aegis, which was going to expire pretty soon anyway, managing to get racks and force 2 buybacks. Couldn't have gone any better.
Yeah, the buybacks are the killer there, because Storm really wants that BKB, that just pushes him even further back. Alchemist, he does have some big items, but he wants that next big one. I don't know if you go for an Abyssal Blade or something along those lines, just to stop that Tiny during the BKB duration.
Yeah, I guess I actually... I was wrong. It was actually 3 buybacks they forced. I forgot that the Storm bought back as well. I was just thinking of the Sand King and the Alchemist. But yeah, I mean, we've just kind of seen the tether has actually just done so much work in this fight. Because of the mobile heroes from Bravado, it's so difficult for them to actually jump in with the Wisp having the Tiny tethered in the middle of the fight. Between the passive from the Tiny, which I think was what stunned the Sand King there, and the tether obviously making it very difficult. Without Storm having that BKB that you're talking about, he's really just not been able to do a whole lot. I mean, I think the Orchid was still a reasonable pickup for him, but it just he hasn't done much with it at all. In fact, the Storm has pretty much been a non-issue in this game, which has kind of been the story of the game for them. I mean, Puck honestly hasn't done too much for Energy either. A couple of his ultimates haven't been that effective. His silence has been a bit better. So I mean, it really hasn't been a story of the mids this game, which is kind of what you would expect with kind of 2 playmaking mids with a Storm and a Puck, but instead it's really just been basically the story of the Tiny plus Wisp. which, I mean, well, that's why you pick Tiny plus Wisp.
Yeah, it's quite unusual. I did really expect Storm to have much more of an impact in this game, especially against a Furion, Visage, Wisp, who are easy pickings for him.
Yeah, I mean, we can actually really credit the Wisp's positioning because, I mean, a Wisp with only 3 deaths at 34 minutes, it's quite impressive. It means that he's always basically had himself in a spot where it's not easy for anyone to initiate on him. I would assume, I mean, I don't think that the Storm's just misjudged things, so I would assume that the Wisp has just positioned himself very well, since I haven't really seen him in a situation where he's getting initiated on in the beginning of the fight very often. And we do actually see that Tiny has picked up the Manta now as well, so that's going to really significantly increase his damage output. Obviously, Manta being based off of base damage and Tiny having a ton of base damage. Storm is going to jump in on Zera here. Zera will probably go down between the Sand King, Burrow Strike, but again, really nice familiar micro, and wow, Storm completely melting the Tiny. Tiny doesn't have his BKB pop, so does get pushed back by the cogs there, but doesn't really care too much. Zera is probably going to die, but the Clockwork is going to die as well, and that is still a 2-for-1 trade. They do actually still have the relocate, so it's possible they will consider relocating after the Sand King. Now, Sand King tries to TP around the other side of the cliff, but the Tiny with the Tether and the Phase Boots and the Manta just way too fast, catches up to him easily enough, and the Tether stun is enough to prevent him from TPing out, making it a 3-to-1 in favor of Energy.
It's so difficult for Bravado Gaming. They can't find pickoffs because of the 5-man, well, just walking around the map really, and the ability to be mobile with the relocate, the Furion ultimate. The Furion, he's not far away from his Hex now. We did see that 20-minute Shadow Blade, which was a bit unusual, and his farm has been quite lackluster without the Midas. And we're just going to see Energy here walk into the base, take another tier 3 tower, and possibly Rax.
Yeah, there is no glyph for Bravado, so actually the Rax is going to go down even before Storm and Sand King can be up, and without those two heroes, there's no way that Bravado are going to fight here. Bravado are very patient, which is actually one of their strong suits, I would say, when defending their base, and intelligently enough aren't going to try to start a fight with only 3 heroes, which allows Energy to take another Rax, and like you said, this is just going to put the game basically out of reach for Bravado, but still, in a situation like that where, I mean, you're basically putting the game out of reach for yourself by allowing them to take a second lane of melee Rax, still better than actually putting the game out of reach by just losing 3 heroes in a suicide attempt to try to save the Rax and then not being able to actually do anything when they take all 3 of your lanes, ranged and melee.
Yeah, exactly. If they had gone in there, they would have lost all of their heroes and possibly just lost the game completely, but let them take the melee Rax. It still keeps them in the game, even though it does give them a larger disadvantage.
Yep, and I mean, it's definitely going to be tough for them. The big thing is going to actually... does this Courier have a smoke on it? No, there's got to be smoke on one of the supports. No, still no smoke on either of the supports. There should be a smoke on one of these supports basically right now. We know that the Roshan will be up in about a minute now. I mean, I'm sure they have the timer down. And that Roshan is basically going to be the last chance to actually do something. We're basically going to have to see a really big epicenter from the Sand King. They're going to have to hopefully try to catch Energy in the pit, which I don't think is going to happen, but maybe something along those lines, or force Energy to clump up on the Storm who initiates and then get a Burrow Strike epicenter combo off, which is really their only hope at this point in the game. We do see the smoke pot up now, so yeah, hopefully that's basically what they can look forward to. We also have Heaven's Halberd on the Alchemist, which I guess is a concession to the fact that the BKB on the Tiny should be pretty low at this point.
I feel really sad for the Sand King. I've seen him a couple of times, 1700 gold, 1800 gold. He's obviously thinking, I'm 300 gold to dagger, guys, can we just not fight? Let me get 300 gold. Then they take an engagement, Wisp TPs on top of him, Furion TPs on top of him, loses all that gold again and again, and he's back down to 400.
Yeah, it's been really rough. Well, he did have to buy back one time too, which is really, I'm sure, hurt him so much, and didn't actually end up accomplishing anything too, which is kind of a shame. So yeah, Sand King, like I said, just basically been a non-issue. He's pretty much been a single targeted stun and absolutely nothing else this game, which I guess is the risk you run. But here comes the smoke. Energy on the high ground are going to spot out Bravado, going to be able to clump up this entire team, going to get cleaved to death. Almost Storm getting out of there, but does end up dying anyway. Tiny's going to turn around on the Alchemist. The GG calls are out by Bravado. Alchemist actually doing a fair amount of damage to Seam here, but Seam is just going to be able to walk out of there in the end, and that is going to be the game. So looked like a pretty strong draft from Bravado, but Energy managed to pull it out just with their Wisp play. I will expect to see the Wisp banned in the second game here. Durka, I mean, any last thoughts about this game?
Yeah, pretty much what you said. A lot of mobility from Energy, allow them to take control across the map. Nice, very nice Wisp play. That's what kept them in the game, and Tiny farming up very nicely as well. But we saw from that last engagement, a slight mistake there. What you would want to do is stay on the high ground for as long as possible. When you have darkness above you, even when you're smoked, against a Tiny who can cleave through your entire team in 3 hits, that's really not a mistake you can make.
Now have
Yes, absolutely. That was certainly a misplay by them, and definitely right to point it out. So anyway, this is just game one of Energy versus Bravado in the DGL, sponsored by SteelSeries and powered by Telcom. We will be right back with game number 2, so don't go anywhere. Hopefully a chance for Bravado to get some redemption. Stay tuned.